Good day, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome to this newest edition of Voice It over your Pan-African TV for You Media, where today we'll be discussing insecurity on the African continent with relation to the visit of French President Emmanuel Macron to Cameroon come July 25th and 26th, that is in the days ahead. Of course, we'll be seeing how his visit, what it means to Cameroonians, as well as what it means to the Sahel region, given that he's military. The military has failed in several parts of the Sahel region. Ladies and gentlemen, stay with us. This is Voice It. Ladies and gentlemen, to clock today's edition, we have two guests on our guest list this afternoon. We shall be having an assistant professor of history and Pan-African studies join us all the way from the United States of America, Washington, D.C. He is Dr. Nyaka Lagoka. He will be joining us shortly. And in the studio with me this afternoon is Mr. Asong Michael. You are a legal expert. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Jakes. It's a pleasure.
Thank you immensely for joining us on today's edition.
You're welcome.
Okay. Today we shall be discussing insecurity. The last time we spoke insecurity, but today we are looking at it from a different perspective, given that French President Emmanuel Macron is coming to Cameroon, though he'll be discussing things like the Anglophone crisis and the crises that have been affecting the African continent. Though we want to recall that the French military officials there in Cameroon and in the Sahel region have actually for several years now been fighting terrorism and other acts of insecurity, but now we are at the point where French president is coming to Cameroon, and he shall be meeting with President Paul Biya of Cameroon to talk different issues. So how do you assess this whole visit?
Well, I'll first of all like to say that the relationship between Cameroon and France is not something of today. It's a relationship that dates since 1900, during the colonial periods, and Cameroon and France have shared so many things in common. It's true that their relationship was first of all at the start based on some sort of authoritative relationship through colonialism, but as years went by with the different types of human rights conventions which have been put in place, this relationship changed, and through independence which we had in the 1960s, we're able to establish different types of relationships with our colonial master France, who normally is not supposed to be considered as one at this moment. But when we see the way things have been going on, we realize that there's some sort of neo-colonialism, because the type of independence which our forefathers desired, like Umnyombe, is not what we are actually seeing today, because we don't yet have economic independence. We are still using a colonial monetary system. We don't really have political independence, because when you look at the way our politicians behave, you see before elections, you see people flying to France, you see people going to France, politicians going to France, and you have the impression they are going to seek the approval of France.
Exactly. If you want to follow the 11 colonial accords that were signed, you will notice that every French colony here in Africa needs to seek the accord of their colonial masters.
Yeah, that's true. But as I earlier said, things are changing. There are new laws which have been put in place, new conventions, and through the UN, countries now are sovereign. So when you talk of a state being sovereign, it means that that state has a capacity to take its own decisions and to determine the path which it is going to take. You see, so we cannot say that some of these colonial accords have to be respected. Actually, we are sovereign, we are a state, and so we have to take our destiny into our hands. But sometimes you see the way our politicians behave, and you feel like we are still being colonized, or we are still being ruled. So it's not strange to see President Macron coming to Africa, to French to French colonies to come and discuss security issues, because they still live in that shadow. They still live in that shadow, but unfortunately things are changing. And if we realize the influence of colonial masters have been degrading over the few decades, and we are seeing that their influence is not more resolving our issues. And I think that is the reason why other countries, like for example Mali, is beginning to take different steps to resolve their issues. They want to resolve their issues themselves. They are looking for a way to be completely independent, militarily independent, economically independent, politically independent, so that they can resolve their own issues. And I think that that's where we are all heading to, that independence, to be able to stand and take our own decisions and resolve our own problems. Because the people who are fighting are Africans. So you have Africans fighting against Africans. So African rebel groups fighting against those on seat. So I don't see why we need some external party or a third party to come and resolve our own issues, whereas we could resolve them by ourselves.
Exactly, we can resolve things ourselves. I just think it's time we welcome our guest joining us all the way from US, Dr. Nyaka Lagoke. Good afternoon, sir. You're welcome to today's edition. I think it's time we welcome our guest, Dr. Nyaka. Good afternoon, Doc. You're welcome to today's edition.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you immensely for taking out time off your busy schedule to join us.
No problem. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Okay, over to you, Doc. I would like to ask you this question. Given the visit of French President Emmanuel Macron to Cameroon at a time when most African countries are trying to kick off a French president or get rid of French presence here in the continent, what do you have to think about this?
First of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity, and I would like to commend the gentleman in the studio who just spoke, and then he said many great things, and I just want to say that Africa is changing, and then the Europeans, they know it, and then they are failing their own people with the war in Ukraine, and then of course they are looking for any opportunity in order to still maintain their hegemony in the world. And I think it was in April, the Chancellor of Germany, Olaf, who's taking some ill-advised and ill-inspired decisions in the context of the war between Ukraine and Russia, decided to go to Senegal in order to secure gas and then many other stuff in the field of energy, for Germany. So it has always been like that. So anytime the Europeans are lacking something and then they need something, when they don't have it, they go overseas to other places in order to take by force what they want. And then for me, what Macron is doing can be situated in that context, because France is losing Africa. And then, so yeah, this is what I want to say. And then I don't know what he thinks he's going to get, because like the gentleman in the studio said, Africa is moving, changing, and then there are things that, the European cannot do anymore.
Yeah, I'll stay with you, Dr. Nyaka. We want to recall that one of the accords that was signed between France and its French colonies in 1959 actually states that all the colonies are actually obliged to seek military support from France. Now, we want to recall that during the times of Boko Haram, for instance, Cameroon here in Africa did ally with other African countries, not France. What do you have to? What's your take on this take, of course?
About the question about the military agreement
yes.
between France and yes. No, it's not just that. When the Europeans, when they saw that they were losing Africa in the 50s, the British started that earlier than the French. They put together that organization called Commonwealth. That the British, the French will come later on with what we call the the Franco-African community, which was put into place in 1958 by General de Gaulle, and then many of those African colonies were asked in order to vote for the referendum, and the French were expecting each one of them to say yes. Secretary of Guinea said no on September 28, 1958, and then that community that the French established was going to become the foundation of French neocolonialism. And then Nkrumah, when the European put into place the European Economic Community, which became today the European Union, Nkrumah warned Africans that what they were going to put into place, that neocolonialism was going to be what he called collective colonialism. And then on every level, be trade, economy, development, security, the French signed different types of agreements with the Africans. And then, but what we see are the military bases, and that's why we talk about the military presence of the French and then of the United States later on, of many other European countries in Africa. But if you take every sector, you see the expression, the manifestation of what Nkrumah called neocolonialism. So now, in the case of Boko Haram in Cameroon, many other, like Boko Haram in Cameroon in Nigeria, we have not seen, even today with the jihadists, we don't see the Europeans expressing that willingness to really support Africa in order to stop terrorism. We don't see that the way we want. They may do things here and there, but this is not what we want. If the Europeans want to help the Africa gain its security, they can do that in less than 1 year or so, but they are not doing that. So that's why it is on Africans to organize and then to take their responsibility in order to do what they have to do for the sovereignty of the African people, so that we can use our own resources, those military bases. The pretext of insecurity in Africa, it is for the exploitation of the African resources.
Thank you, Dr. Nyaka, for that elaborate contribution. Over to you, Mr. Akuma. Okay, we have Kwame Nkrumah, one of Africa's great minds, that did mention that Africans have the solution to our African problems. We are capable of solving our own problems. If you have to join these or coin these to insecurity on the African continent, precisely in the Sahel region, what would you say?
Well, what I have to say is that several Pan-Africanists had already spoken about these things, and I don't think it's only Kwame Nkrumah, but there are other strong Pan-Africanists who actually mentioned that if we really have to develop Africa to stand as one, united and be prosperous, we have to take our responsibilities into our hands. And we even have Thomas Sankara, who had the same ideology, and I think even President Amadi Ahijo had the same type of ideology later on, because if you even look into our constitution, it is clear in paragraph 2 of the preamble of our 1972 constitution, which is amendments in 1996 and 2008, that the Cameroonian people believe in a united and prosperous Africa, and that will go through our solidarity and us putting hands together. So when we come back to what Kwame Nkrumah said, it is very clear. I don't think Africans should be considered as an inferior race, as that is the impression that we have been given. A continent and a race who is always in search of a new leader, because I appreciate what the Malians are doing, but I think and I believe that they are still falling in the same error if they have to seek assistance from the Russians. It's not bad, but I think that we have to think differently in the sense that we have to be conscious of the fact that we have the capacity, we have...
Yeah, Dr. Adesina once mentioned that Africa has the capacity, we have the potentials.
Exactly, and we have very learned people in Africa, and who can sit down together as a people, as a nation, as a continent, to resolve their own problems. It's rather unfortunate that when Mali started to see and to seek means to resolve their own problems, we had African countries who were instead against them, you see. And those are the things that make dispute resolution in Africa difficult, and it actually favorizes insecurity because most Africans are not united under one vision, over one way of doing things. So that makes dispute resolutions in Africa very, very difficult. But if we boil down to what Kwame Nkrumah said, it is clear. If we want true security in Africa, then that can only be done by Africans.
Exactly, that can only be done by Africans. We have the yam and the knife.
Exactly.
Okay, so we are looking at Cameroon because French president is coming to Cameroon. Now let's take a case where the Anglophone crisis has been ongoing for close to 6 years now. The Cameroonian government is yet to put a stop to this war. Now, French president will be coming to Cameroon, and one of the things that will be on the menu will be the Anglophone crisis. What French president's intervention now at this point, is it going to change things regarding the resolution, the final stop to this crisis?
Well, from my own perspective, I believe that it's not going to change anything, because the French president can only act as an advisor in the state, because Cameroon is a sovereign state.
We are 5 years gone.
Yeah.
Why could he not advise earlier on?
I strongly believe he has advised earlier on,
but yet nothing has been done.
He has spoke of the crisis and that the government should take proper action. But as I said, he can only act as an advisor, because I think our president, despite all the negative things that could be said about him, I think that he's a good politician, in the sense that he has been able to know how to handle his foreign relationships, you see. And most of the actions he does not really rely on external or exterior advice, you see. So for me, I strongly believe that the President Macron's visit here will not change anything. I think our leaders have to know that the Anglophone crisis is a bomb in retaliation. And if the crisis is not resolved, then it is going to consume Cameroon, because it has already been consuming Cameroon on several domains or sectors.
We could link that to our crisis on the African continent and the Sahel. It's been consuming a lot of communities.
Exactly. And I think that ours is even more consuming, because when you count the number of people who have been displaced, you are at about
3,000?
No, not
Even
3,000.
more.
No, we are about 750,000 people.
We are more. It's just a
the
number.
number of people killed is about 4,000. This is more than the deaths in Mali and the Sahel. So the Anglophone crisis is, I think it should be the top topic in Africa. And if we really want to have a prosperous Cameroon and to have a peaceful Cameroon, our leaders should understand that the crisis must be resolved. So it takes their decision, it takes their willingness to resolve it, because all what we have been seeing now, we are turning around. Because for example, as I said, in the case of DRC, we had rebels who were not even invited in the peace agreement, in the talk. So, of course, the atrocities are perpetually being committed day by day. And it's the same thing we're having here. We have political leaders who have been imprisoned. We have rebel leaders who are in the bushes, and the government believes that they are not supposed to dialogue with terrorists. But the truth about it is that when you look at most conflicts in the world, at the end of the day, some sort of dialogue or some sort of agreement had to take place with the leaders of the rebel groups. But here we don't have the same scenario. We have Siseko and co being imprisoned, and automatically, who are we discussing then with? You are discussing with people who don't even are not even fighting. So of course, no resolution can really effectively take place. So I think the government has to review its strategy. We are all brothers. I don't think that we have to be treating others as enemies, because your brother cannot be your enemy. It's impossible.
Exactly.
If he is actually claiming for certain rights, then see into it and resolve it. Because this crisis we have today, even if it can be suppressed militarily, in 50 years, in 100 years, it's still going to come up. And that is why, for me, I believe that the coming of Macron should be one where colonial conventions should even be reviewed. Because we know that one of the root causes of the Anglophone crisis are the different colonial agreements which Britain had with France, and later on Ahijo's ambition to unite the whole of Cameroon. And probably we know the way things went on in those days, when there was no respect for human rights, for certain rights, and there was a lot of fraud. So these are things that we have to review and to see into it, if the Accords actually followed the rules which were set by the UN and the different international conventions, and see if there are issues with it or there are vices in the conventions, then they be modified so that in future such things will not resurge and some people will not feel cheated upon their rights.
Thank you so much for that elaborate contribution. Over to you, Dr. Nyaka. You are a professor of history and Pan-African studies, meaning you really understand the topic. Former U.S. President Barack Obama once said that Africa does not need great leaders, but needs great institutions. If we have to link that with insecurity, and that if great institutions are being brought up to the African continent and our youth are trained in the way that will be able to better tackle situations, then we are looking forward to an Africa free of violence, free of insecurity, and of course, a peaceful Africa to come.
I give a direct answer to this question. I want to respond to one segment of what the co-panelist said when he was talking about Mali.
Yes.
And I've heard so many Africans say, oh yes, you cannot replace by an imperial power by another imperial power. Or, you cannot say that you don't want Russians, you don't want the French, and now you want the Russians. But I think that it is a little bit, it is a little bit too simplistic. Why I'm saying that is that when you are doing a war or when you are trying to free yourself, it happened in several parts in the world. When you need the support of others, like-minded people. So it happened today. Russia and many African countries, they have common interest. It is about the sovereignty of the nations of the world, and that's the concept that Russia is promoting because of its own reality. Then, as Russia is trying to survive. In this world where we see that the West they literally do not to have a war against Russia. We saw the NATO expansion that in the borders of Russia. So that's one element. When China was fighting for its independence, China needed the support of Russia. When Africa was fighting for its independence, we have the support of Russia, and we have the support of China, and we have the support of Cuba. So today, because like the gentleman said in the studio, because the Malians themselves, they are not that united, and then therefore it's going to be difficult to think that the Malians are not going to need any external support for them to stand against France and NATO and the United States. This is not possible. So that's one thing I wanted to rectify. Now coming back to the Obama quotation, in the beginning I was thinking that I was thinking that Obama was correct completely, like 100%. I used to think that I was going to agree with him, but later on I realized that no, it does not tell the whole story of Africa. Yeah, it does not, and I'm going to say why. Today, what is happening in Europe, when we saw the irrational decision that they are taking in the war against Russia, then you can see that Europe lacks visionary leaders. And then, if you can have the greatest institutions in the world, but if the leaders they are not up to the mission, then the institutions are going to crumble and the institutions are not going to function properly. So there are countries in the world, I can talk about Europe and many other places, where we can see the institutions are working, but the people are so corrupt, lacking vision, then of course they cannot meet the needs of the people, and they cannot take the interest of the countries to the highest level. So how are we going to build those institutions when we know that the West has decimated the brightest that we have produced from 1958 to 1968. Umnyombe, Félix Moumié in Cameroon, Sékou Touré in Guinée, Modibo Keïta in Mali, Kwame Nkrumah overthrown February 24, 1966. Dr. King killed April 4, 1968. Malcolm X killed on February 21st, 1965. Buganda assassinated. So these were leaders who have like a clear vision for Africa or for the black world, and they were liquidated, they were eliminated by the Europeans. My point is that if we have such leaders and then we have great institutions, then we can aspire, to be happy or to reduce our issues on the face of earth. But if we don't have that, and then we have just great institutions led by visionary leaders, I think that it does not resolve the problem. So to summarize, we need, yes, strong institutions, but we need bright, visionary, selfless leaders who care about their people. That is my answer to your question.
Thank you, Dr. Nyaka. Staying in that light, can we say that French president's visit is actually to rectify the fact that the French are actually losing grip of the African continent, given that Russia is actually gaining ground so far?
Yeah, like that, when we talk, maybe we're not going to have time to talk about all those things in this show. But we don't even have to go and look for a medium or a psychic. The French, Macron is going to Cameroon. I saw that he wanted to go to Benin also. The reason is simple. This morning as I was surfing online, I saw that there's a book that was published. I have not read it. I just saw the title. Written by one of the greatest French journalists, Stephen Smith, and another one, Antoine Glaser. He's also a great journalist. So those two great names, Antoine Glaser and Stephen Smith, they've published a book in French, Comment la France a perdu l'Afrique, How French Lost Africa. So I just saw the title this morning. So the French journalists, people care about the hegemony or the presence of the French. All of them, they are in agreement that France is losing Africa because of several reasons. Even Germany now is like one of the most important economic player. It comes even before France, according to some statistics. And then now we have Russia that understood that, Putin understood that what he was doing was not the right approach, because he wanted to defend his country, protect his country, but he did not want to get involved like in geopolitics, like in let's say like on the international scene. But now Vladimir Putin understands that for him to be able to promote his vision of the world, he needs to have some alliances and some allies. Iran, beyond the ex-Soviet era, like countries, and many other things that he's trying to do. And another element, if yes, Russia is strong, Russia is independent. Russia is self-sufficient. But in the war against the West, Russia needed China, and Russia needed India in the context of the BRICS. And then, so this is what is happening in the world. So the French are losing, and there's no way. Maybe in the next 50 years, they may eliminate many other leaders. They may kill people here and there. They may do something, and then we can see that they're going to try and control again Africa. But the trend that I see is going to be difficult. And then when we see what you guys are doing, the media, the African media, for you media, many other things in the field of media, many other things like in the streets, how people are organizing. There is like an elevated African consciousness that needs to be expanded. And then if France wants to understand, they have to hear the cry of the African masses. If they don't do that and they want to continue with the neo-colonialist policies, there is no way it's going to be good for the French. And they need to adjust.
Thank you, Dr. Nyaka. Thank you so much. So you agree with Dr. Nyaka that France has to actually hear the cry of Africans?
Well, I want to first start by thanking Dr. Nyaka for the wonderful things that he has been saying, and I've certainly learned a lot. But he said that for Mali, seeking assistance from Russia is not an issue, okay? But for me, I think it's a very big problem because there is a principle in international relations. International relations is all based on interest. Interest. So Russia is not helping Mali for free.
But the thing is, France had signed a contract with African colonies that African colonies are supposed to denounce all military transactions with any other country.
Yeah, which
so they are breaching that.
Yeah, which I agree. But what I'm trying to say is that Africa has to learn how to be independent. And independence comes with a struggle. All the big countries we see today, they became independent out of their struggles. America, Britain, France, I think there was a period where France colonized Britain, a period where Britain colonized America, left and right, and they all had to struggle on their own to become who they are today and to be independent. We have to follow the same example because, as I earlier said, political or international relations is all about interest. So if Mali is seeking interest from Russia, then I strongly believe that we'll still find ourselves in the same position because Russia now is colonizing Africa, just like China is doing. But they are doing it in different ways, which seem to us good because what we have seen from the other colonial masters, you understand, are not sometimes beneficial to us. But China, Russia, they want to do the same thing, but we will always be on the losing part because there are so many things we have not yet understood. We have to believe in ourselves. We have to know that we can make it. We have to know that politically we can be independent. We have to know that economically we can be independent. We have to know that militarily we can be independent, and we don't need any external help except help which is coming from other African countries, because I strongly believe that Africa is a nation. So if we have help from other African countries, it is still Africa. That is the point I'm trying to make. But as you earlier on asked me, I strongly believe that the coming of President Macron to Cameroon and to Benin will not change anything. I think if France had good leaders and good visionaries, they had to understand that in the years to come, these things are going to arise. It's just like even in the 70s, people had already been prophesying about the Anglophone crisis, and that is just a matter of time is going to come up. So if we had leaders who were taking advice, they would have taken measures to prevent what is happening today. And it's very easy. When you look at what sparked up the Anglophone problem, you are like, but why did they need to get this far to get people annoyed? You understand? So it therefore means that when we Africans today have to understand that in future we have to prepare the road for the future generations, and to do that we have to start thinking today that how will things be in 50 years, how will things be in 100 years, and to do that we have to resolve our own problems by ourselves. Now, concerning international relations, it is impossible for a country or for a continent not to interact with other countries or other continents. So now we have to redefine international relations in the sense that it should be a profitable and equitable transaction. It should not be a transaction where one party is gaining 95% and the other is gaining just 5%. That is where the problem lies. And I think that even in our relation with France, that is where the problem lies. But I strongly believe that if there can be a balance between the two, between our interests, between the profit or the benefits that we can draw from each other, then there is no problem. If it's 50-50, there is no problem. Because as of now, Africa is still dependent on technology, intelligence of foreign countries.
Exactly, right down to economics.
Exactly. So we have to look for a common foundation. There are things which in Africa we are good in. There are certain things we have. We have natural resources, we have good soils for agriculture, for planting. Now it just remains for our leaders to be able to get into relationships or conventions that will favor everybody equally, sit on the table as equals, as sovereign states, and make the others understand that things have changed. They cannot expect the Africa of today to think like the Africa of 60, 50 years ago. That is practically impossible. And we have to sit down together, work things out for a profitable relationship. So if France is surprised today that it is losing Africa, then its leaders have failed, because they started by losing their colonial authority. It went on to democracy, even though they had some influence, but things are changing, and they will keep on losing, because that is the natural trend. So all we just need to do is that we just need to work hand in hand. Of course, I don't think Africa can do on its own. We need the participation of all the other countries in the UN, and we just need to work together so that we can make things better for us and for everybody, and make our planet a better place.
Okay, so you agree that for African continent to move forward, they have to start breaking all those accords that were made some years back?
Of course. I believe that they have to break them, and they can break them legally, due to the fact that there are certain principles, contractual principles, which require that the parties should be on the same equality table. There should be no duress, no force. There should be no vice or fraud. So those are things that if you look at most of our colonial conventions or colonial accords or treaties, you will realize that all those things had their place. So many conventions were being signed to the detriment of Africans, and if you look at it, some of them you can even cry, because you can't believe that that is how a particular nation can be duped and extorted. So I believe that through legal means, we must not do it in a way which is not legal. Through legal means, these conventions can even be brought before the International Court of Justice for them to be publicly and legally cancelled. Then from there, we seek how we could do things in a normal, legal, and equitable way.
Okay, over to you, Dr. Nyaka. Do you think that the military restructuring in strategy in the African continent, as was suggested by French President Emmanuel Macron, is actually going to change things?
listen to my friend said, like he said, he paid me a compliment. I'm going to to pay him back the compliment. He said many great things, but there's one thing, and then I want to talk about that. It's like when we talk about, I am a Pan-Africanist, and then all the people in Africa who are Pan-Africanists or who are nationalists, it means that we want to control our own resources. We want to be independent. We want to be sovereign. So these are the goals. Now the question is not what. The question is how you get there. And this is what I was talking about. So when you are fighting for freedom or you're fighting a war, you need the support of like-minded people. This is what I said. When people use the word Russian colonialism, I do not agree. In the case of Africa, I do not agree with that. Russia and the United States were at the Berlin Conference as observers, but they did not take, beside the Liberia in the case of America, but they did not take any, Russia did not take any colony in Africa. But then we know that the most important colonizers in Africa were the French, the British, and then at a lesser extent like Germany, and then Portugal and Spain. So this is in Italy, this is in Belgium, this is the reality of Africa. And now he was talking, Russia is not going to Africa on humanitarian grounds, for sure. Russia is not Cuba. And then that's why I wanted to respond to that, because Cuba, under Castro, when they contributed and they fought in Angola for the independence of Angola, Cuba and Fidel Castro, they left Cuba and they did not even ask for a dime. This is something that is like an exception in the history of the world and the history of humanity. And then if you guys have the opportunity, I'm talking about the listeners, they can see a documentary in French or in English online, Cuba, an African Odyssey, or Cuba, l'Odyssée africaine. What I just said, you can see that in that documentary. Now, the next level is that whatever plan the Europeans are going to put into place, I'm talking about Macron. First of all, I did not take Macron too seriously when he became the president of France. I saw him brilliant, a philosopher, like he decided he worked so well that he transcended the divide between left and right, and then he became the president of France. And then I never believed that Macron was going to come and end France-Afrique. And I never believed that he has the capacity to even change France, to even change the relation, the nature or the structure of France-Afrique. And then whatever thing he did in Burkina Faso when he met the student there, how he tried to undermine the creation of ECHO in West Africa. So all the things show that Macron is the symbol of a dying empire, and it is true. And then that is doing everything possible in order to maintain their hegemony. And again, in the case of Mali, and we saw the duplicity of France and then the Europeans, how they think that using like great and beautiful noble concept like the humanitarian intervention in Mali, but at the same time, we read, we saw that everything that they were doing, it was not for the interest of the Malians. Now, so that's why I agree with the brother on that. We need to promote, and this is what we are doing. When I say we, I'm talking about the 3 people or 4 people here in the studio. I'm talking about the people who are working in different media. I'm talking about all the people in the streets, people who are raising the consciousness so we can build, we can see, or we see it, the rise of a new African. And now if tomorrow people from our group become leaders of African countries, yes, my brother, they are going to try and tell the Europeans or the Asian or the Russians, no, for the exploitation of our oil, you cannot take 83%, you cannot take 90%. So that's also a tragedy of Africa, that when we sign contracts in the mining sector, in the energetic sector, we see that the Europeans take the bulk of the wealth, or the bulk of the resources. Why? Because of the leaders who are not strong enough, and because of the economic structure that is controlled by the Europeans, and because the civil society in Africa has not involved itself in that bargaining process. That's why we are still where we are today. So it is happening, it is coming, but we need to level up and we need to do better than what we are doing.
Okay, Dr. Nyaka, to wrap up this, what do you think is the way forward for not just the Sahel region, but for the African continent as a whole?
Oh, listen, first of all, thank you, Sharon. That was a beautiful show, and I feel like it was nice to hear from the beautiful things said by the co-panelists, and it's a wonderful topic. What we need to do, it is simple. It is the promotion of the Pan-African consciousness. Today, thanks to thanks to internet and the creation of the social media, we can interact. We've been talking. Today we have in the show using Zoom. I don't have to take a ticket to come to Cameroon for this show. It is happening everywhere. And then there are people like you guys are doing the right thing. There are many more, and we need to continue doing what we are doing, because Pan-Africanism is the way. Pan-Africanism can help Africa survive. And then if we are not united, there is no way we can survive in this world. Again, I'm taking the example of NATO or the West. For them to go against Russia, they have to be united like 30 countries. While we know that America is the most important country in the world, but America needs the 27 countries of the European Union. They need some other countries that are not even members of the European Union. So it is there. That's the same thing that we'll be doing, and in the case of Africa, we call that Pan-Africanism. And next second level, we need to level up, and we need to do better. We need to support each other, and we need to reduce what I'm call the number of the unpatriotic sons of Africa who are willing to sell themselves in order to serve the interests of the Europeans to the detriment of the interests of Africa. So thanks for the opportunity. That will be my concluding remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Nyaka, for your elaborate contribution on today's topic of discussion.
Thank you very much.
Over to you, Dr. Kumar. Mr. Kumar, what do you think is the way forward for the African continent?
Well, I think Prof has almost said everything.
Yes, but I believe you have your own opinion.
I appreciate his presence and all the wonderful words that he said. As for me, Africans have to know that they are a people, they are a nation, and that their independence can only come from their self-determination, as provided in the UN Declarations of Human Rights, Article 1. Foremost, Africans have to seek good leadership, because if we have leaders who are being manipulated or being put in place by foreign leaders, of course they are not going to seek the interests of the African continent. So we as Africans, we have to look for leaders that would secure the interest of all our African countries and of Africa as a whole. Without that, it will be really impossible for us to make it. And put in place mechanisms to prone good governance, because if you look at all the crises we are having today, all the insecurity we are having today, it is due to bad governance. In Mali, they will tell you that the rebels are those who are fighting, were once fighting or fighting against the government. You see, so you realize that it's all due to bad governance. All the crises we're having today, all the different conflicts, the Anglophone crisis, the crisis in DRC, is all due to bad governance. So we have to put in place mechanisms to govern our people very well in an equitable way and actually securing their rights. If we are able to do that, then certainly we'll be able to resolve insecurity issues and secure our African continent. So it's not something big to do. Even our leaders now can change the way of doing things, can change their mindsets, and together we'll be able to make Africa a great continent.
Thank you immensely for taking out time out of your busy schedule to join us on today's edition.
Thank you, Sharon.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's on that note that we draw down the curtains of today's edition. On our guest list this afternoon, we had Dr. Nyaka Lagoke, who is a Pan-Africanist as well as a political analyst, who joined us all the way from Washington there in the United States of America. We equally had Dr. Asson Kuma, who is a legal expert with the Rwandan Bar Association as well as a medical professional. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're talking about insecurity, we're talking about politics. Tomorrow we shall talk something else. This is the African continent where we see what is ours. Ladies and gentlemen, it's on that note that we say bye for now and God bless Africa.